and welcome to Murder and Coffee, TPK Roleplay's GM talk show, where we discuss all things TTRPGs and game mastering. I am Tyrant, and I'll be one of your co-hosts this morning. I am joined by our second co-host, the lovely Sarah X. Franco. Today, we will be diving into the rules and mechanics for Dungeons and Dragons 5th Edition. For all of you DMs, aspiring actors, and intrepid adventurers out there, we will be accepting audience questions throughout the stream. While you all think about some things you would like to ask, why don't we introduce ourselves really quick? Sarah?
Hi, I am Osiris Franco. You can find me here at TBK GMing The Bard's Refrain once a month. A week from today. I'm also starting to dip my toe in running some one shots here. So a week from Sunday, I have a modified honey heist rules set game, The Swift and Vicious, which is a one shot I'm running based on the Fast and Furious franchise. It's pretty kooky doo. Other than that, I play a lot here and over at Nat 20, and I stream on my own Twitch occasionally, but Ty can attest it's not really it's sporadic at best. Ty,
It
tell
may
the
be
people about
sporadic.
you.
It may be sporadic, but it's very good. I am Tyrant. I am a GM, staff member, player, and host for TBA Roleplay. I am also a player over on Nat 20. You can find me on my Twitch and Twitter, which are at Dr. Tyrant. I do stream on my personal Twitch a bit now. I will be streaming later today. So yeah, that's me. I mean, I DM some one shots. That's about it. There's gonna be a VOD of some Scooby Doo stuff that happened last night. So I
Hell
guess
yeah,
yeah,
Scooby
it,
Doo.
it was kind of fun, I guess. Um, but yeah, now let's talk really quick about our affiliation with Found Familiar.
Let's do
For those of
it.
you who do not know, we are affiliates with Found Familiar Coffee. Uh, if you scroll down on the panels below the screen, you can find our sponsorship link. You can also look in the chat. If you type in, I think it's exclamation point familiar, you can find the discount link and the discount code. If you go to Found Familiar through that link and use discount code TPK, that's capital TPK, no spaces, at checkout, you will receive 10% off your entire order. I can attest that it is fantastic coffee and they have incredible merchandise as well. So if you're a fan of coffee or if you're a fan of TTRPGs in general, go check them out. They're an incredible company, fantastic people, so they deserve all the love you can give. Um, yeah, I think that's about it, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
What are you drinking today?
I am drinking a local. I think this is what I was drinking last time, because it's hitting the spot real good for me. This is a local out of Utah company, Pink Elephant, and I'm drinking their Rome Roast, uh, which is, as you just saw, I just finished making, and it's
Mhm.
very good.
Um, I today will be drinking nothing. I have no coffee.
Ty,
Uh, it's
no.
fine. It's fine, guys. True to the name of the show, one of us is drinking coffee and one of us
One of us
will be murderous.
murdering someone.
It's fine. It's
Oh
fine.
no, Ty. Oh
I'm
no.
gonna get coffee after the show and I'll be just the happiest boy.
I'll drink
Um,
entirely too much for the both of us. How about that?
you know what? That works. That works. But now that we have intros out of the way, why don't we just get the show on the road?
Can we talk
Sarah,
about this book right now? Can we
yes,
talk about this book right now?
let's talk about the Dungeon Master's Guide by
Okay.
D&D 5th edition.
Yep.
Remember, quick clarification, Sarah and I are going to be going through some stuff on our own, but we would love questions from the audience, specifically questions about D&D 5th edition mechanics or rules that you may not be so sure about. We have the book in front of us. We also have our at least moderately informed opinions. So
Yes.
so yeah,
We run games. We're not experts, but we are experts. Just believe us. Pew 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 pew.
we are as experts as you will believe we are.
I wore a turtleneck, kind of. This
I
actually represents the level of professionalism I bring to anything. Where it's like, should that be more put together? And you go,
I wore a button up, but it's a comfy button up. So
oh, we sneaky.
I think that kind of clarifies my level
Yes.
of commitment to just
No.
about everything as well.
I love it. Ty, I'm gonna ask you a very personal question.
Shoot.
How much of the Dungeons Master's Guide have you actually read?
You know, in chunks, I will say, in chunks, probably all of it.
Mm.
All the way through, never.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, when I started out learning, it was a useful tool.
Mm-hmm.
Then I realized, like, because my initial understanding of D&D 5th edition mechanics was a
Yeah.
combination of the DMG and the player's handbook. And about, I don't know, a few months into DMing, I realized why is everything going so not
Why is
smoothly?
this muy difficile?
Yeah.
I'm missing.
And
I'm missing rules.
yeah, and so I did a little more I guess deep diving into the
Mm-hmm.
DMG itself at that point.
Mm-hmm.
How about you,
100%.
Sarah?
Uh, I'm gonna be real honest with you. I've read less than sections of the Dungeons Master's Guide, which is part of the reason that I thought this was such a great topic. Number one, to like I think a lot of the times the barrier to D&D in particular is just the amount of reading, right? Like there's the player's handbook and then there's the DMG and then there's your character sheets and then there's all the stuff. And like this is a hefty book like for to play a game. And most people
Mhm.
see this and they go, "No." And you said something that resonates with my experience pretty well, which is learning to play to DM from uh, the player's handbook rather than the DMG. And I think that's true for a lot of folks. I think a lot of people sit down at the table as players. They go, yeah, I could do that,
Yeah.
and they just go off. And so on one hand, like I really feel like this is such a fantastic resource. Like there's been multiple times when I opened it or there's been a random Reddit thread and they're like, by the way, this is in the DMG. And I go, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. I frequent a couple of sections here, obviously, like the traditional, like, let's just give you the quick and dirty rules to get started.
Mhm.
Um, and then one of the questions that Purple actually talked about in advance, which we'll get to. And that's about it, like, for the most part. I had always intended to sit down and do the full read through like a good GM so I'd know all the obscure rules.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, if you want to go through 200 or 300 something pages of that,
it's a beautiful
then
book.
oh, absolutely. Like all of the art in it should definitely be a.
Phenomenal.
I mean, a
But
lot of this, all the entire time I've been just flipping through pages right now,
mhm.
is just magic item tables.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
which I will say, like, there's a lot of tables in here that are really really cool.
Mhm.
That if you need magic items, there's magic item tables. But then at the end of the magic item tables, there's guides for creating sentient magic items.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and
Mhm.
everything that goes into that. Then there's artifacts, which is creating artifacts, I should say, which
Mhm.
is really cool. And then actual artifacts like the Wand of Orcus or the Sword of Cass or the Orb of Dragonkind, and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Purple brings up a good point. Like there's all the stuff about planar lore in here. And I also think like there's so much stuff in here to just get you going, and I think kind of encapsulates the heart of D&D, like turning the sessions in the campaign itself into dice rolls, which I like a lot. Like how are your players going to get involved in this plot? Roll a d6. Oh, it's political. Like, what kind of personality does this NPC have? Roll the dice. Oh, it's this. Like I think a lot of the like work of DMing this book resolves, but I feel like I'm me, so I'm like, don't tell me I'm gonna live my life, book. Get
Yeah.
out of here.
And
Just
it's
tell me how
important.
travel works. That's all I care about.
It is important to note that part one and a lot of part two of the DMG, uh, it it is kind of it's just supplements at this point. It's not really
Hmm.
rules and mechanics and
Yeah,
stuff like
I
that.
think
It's
I think
more
yeah.
helping you like create your own world,
Hmm.
creating the multiverse,
Hmm.
developing adventures,
Yeah.
characters, stuff
Hmm.
like that. It's really in I want to say chapters 5. Yeah, it's really in chapter 5. So the first 4 chapters are that kind of more big picture
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
Um, Starting in chapter 5 and on is where you start to find mechanics, um, like encounters,
Hmm.
and you know, chapter 6 is travel time. Everything you could do between adventures. Chapter 7 is
Hmm.
all of
Hmm.
the treasure, magic item
Hmm.
tables, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then part 3 is like the chunky how you run the game kind of
Right.
stuff. So
Right. And I feel like so we have a comment in chat. The lore isn't applicable to everybody's game, so I think it's kind of laid out backwards. See, I agree and simultaneously disagree, because as someone who's running a fully homebrew campaign, like that's a resource that I could have leveraged to be like, what's the equivalent in my world? Is there equivalent in my world? So when like going with with a mindset of where to start, like I still think even if you're not running like a Faerun or Forgotten Realms or whatever, you're not running like D&D canon lore, it still gives you a great resource to be like, I'm going to take this thing, I'm going to tweak it, or I'm going to throw that thing entirely out the window. That's not something that exists in my campaign, and that's going to completely
mhm.
change the flavoring. I'm all about not reinventing the wheel. And so I think the Dungeon Master's Guide does give a lot of resources that I mostly ignore. To just to do what you need to do. And Cole, yes, like rules are meant to be broken. I think one of the big things with GMing is what kind of GM are you? What are your priorities when you're running a game? What do you enjoy? Like there's a reason that people can run games without ever reading any of this. And like it's because that's the kind of experience they're looking for. I would argue that like if that's how you're running D&D, maybe there's a better system for you. Like maybe there's something where the rule set would better support the kind of game you want to play. Um I love Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's great, but yeah, Cole, never read or opened the DMG. See, and that's my thing is maybe there's a better system than Dungeons and Dragons then. But at the same time, I think at that point you are running your own system of Dungeons and Dragons. So who cares?
Well, I think that's the important thing to recognize, though, is that, like Cole said, all of the rules are meant to be broken,
Hmm.
and really, at the end of the day, the only rules that are going to be in your game are the rules that the DM chooses to keep in the game.
Hmm.
The DM can add rules, subtract rules, change rules, all those good things. And you may be thinking, well, then it's not Dungeons and Dragons, but it actually is. It is in the DMG. I want to find the actual page, and I imagine it's probably page 9, the very first page that has content. Maybe. Well, on page 9 it says it's your world, so there's that.
Yeah, I think this was another thing that I wanted to talk to you particularly about, Ty, because I think that the value of of this conversation a little bit, and we're gonna hop into some of the rules and talk a little more mechanic-y stuff and answer questions here in a sec. But I see the value in these rules is like, as GMs, sometimes it can be hard to have conversations with other GMs to be like, so how are you doing this? What's important like to you? I get a baseline of like seeing how other people run games. I love these kinds of conversations. I want to know what like other GMs care about, what they're looking for, all the things. So for me, as far as like rules that I just don't care about at all, living conditions like money per DM kind of spending, anything like that, do not no, do not care. Um like a travel, like I think anything requiring like money cost, like stuff, unless it's like exorbitant, right? Like unless it's something like we want to buy this castle, and then I'm like, okay, well, we might need to talk about how you're going to pay the people that maintain the castle while you're gone.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
unless it's something like massive, I as a DM don't want to track it. If my players want to track it, great. But like I don't, because I don't get any satisfaction from that space at all. Not even a little bit. Like
yeah,
no. No, 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 no. Immediately like don't care about this role.
yeah. And that's again, I think that is going to be probably a kind of cornerstone for this conversation.
Mhm.
Uh, to be completely honest, there are some rules that are like considered very important that I do not care for
Mm.
whatsoever. Like,
Controversy, controversy. Someone get 911 ready so we can report a crime.
well, listen. Okay, so one thing you'll hear from a good amount of people at TPK is the the chief rule is the rule of cool, right?
Yes.
And so a lot of times, if a rule, like situationally, if a rule is going to go against the rule of cool, um, then why keep that rule in there? Like why not let your players defy the laws of physics a little bit for a cool narrative moment? And I think that's really important, especially with streaming. Um, and and for home games, right? Like obviously with home games there's a lot more flexibility because I mean you have as much flexibility as you want, but also people in fandoms don't like it when you break rules.
Right.
um
And that's a point we've hit several times, right? Like when you're a GM, make sure you're sitting down at the same table as folks who want to play the same version of the game as you. Like
yes,
I at mechanic heavy folk who like really want to like get into the nitty-gritties, like they want to play the rules as written, like they're going to be sad at my table. Like they're going to be
yeah.
sad at my table cuz
um
I don't know.
in the Dungeon Master Guide, page 4, in the description for the Dungeon Master, just to clarify, the D&D rules help you and the other players have a good time. Oh, the D&D rules help you and the other players have a good time, but the rules aren't in charge. You're the DM and you are in charge of the game. That said, your goal isn't to slaughter the adventurers, but to create a campaign world that revolves around their actions and decisions, and to keep your players coming back for more. If you're lucky, the events of your campaign will echo in the memories of your players long after the final game session is concluded. So it is quite literally in the official guidebook to this system.
It's dangerous to go alone. Take this and do
Yeah.
whatever you want with it.
Yes. Exactly.
Mhm. I love that.
I think we've uh,
Yeah,
We've gotten that point down.
I want to get into some of the questions.
Sure.
And some of these easy to miss rules. So we have a really great list that was supplied to us by the incredible Luke Locke, a GM here on TBK Roleplay. And
Fantastic.
it's got a lot of talking points that I really want to go through because I think it's great. But there was a question submitted in advance, and it's still kind of in the same vein by Purple. He wanted us to talk a little bit about loot tables.
Loot tables.
Loot tables and how they are used. And I'm gonna peel the curtain back a little bit. Loot tables are nearly exclusively how I manage treasure in the Bard's Refrain. Like 110%. That's how I utilize them. And I think they're phenomenal. I go off of the challenge rating of like my big fight is how I determine what kind of treasure is given out. I don't necessarily do it all at the encounter. I try to like sprinkle it through, and sometimes I'll just roll randomly on those tables. Um, my favorite, I do think that there's a problem in D&D where it's like get the best biggest loot ever, like, so some of the stuff on the tables feels a little bit lackluster, right? Like, but I don't want to give a clairvoyance potion, that's not going to help me punch the monsters real good. But a little bit, that's what adds to the narrative, is these one-off items that I don't see a whole lot in games anymore, where it's like, no, they are one use only. And so you got to be careful about how you use them. But if you use them well, they're super cool. So this is me advocating to use your local loot table because I think they're phenomenal. And I think from a narrative perspective too, some of the stuff can be really wild to fit into the story. For example, I rolled very first session of TBR. I rolled on the loot table and I got black jasper gems, and I was like, how the frick am I going to give out 10 black jasper gems? It's not just like, here's this thing, care about this a little bit, right? And it became a whole narrative point. Like there were black jasper gems in the bottom of a fountain, and my players spent like 10 minutes be like, is this a trap though? Like, do we just get this money or is this a trap though? And it ended up being great. I never would have thought of that on my own. It was just a random loot table experience. And it was fantastic. Like, uh, let's see. I love one of these items, but my players never use them. I know, but I think a lot of it is because they're not conditioned to have them. Like, they just, I think we're all like trying to elevate the game. Like, I'm gonna give them a freaking necklace of fireball, and it's like, dude, chill. Start out with a potion of strength to work our way up. And that's what I like about the loot tables, is it gives you a better understanding of like what loot is appropriate for what level you're at. Cause like 100%, the first time I GM'd, I referred the necklace of fireballs. First time I GM'd, my players were level 1. I was like, by the way, you find this necklace of fireball. And one of my players looked at me like I was insane. And I was like, but narratively it works. He's like, you don't know what you've done. And I didn't, because I just didn't know. It was pretty great.
So going on loot tables a little bit, in the DMG, which loot tables can be found starting on page 133. Sarah, if you want to
Yes,
flip
I
to
will
that.
turn to there.
So there are different types of treasure that the DMG outlines. There's 4 different types. The first is coins, which is, that's obvious. Gemstones and art objects, which are more physical manifestations of wealth. So obviously you find those and then you can trade those in for stuff. They don't go super into other types of stuff. But there's also, like, if you really think about it, there's gemstones and art objects. But what else? Think about this: the society that you have built, perhaps, or that your players are playing in. What is valuable in that society? If you are in a torrid desert wasteland and your players come across fresh water, that that is loot. That is loot. You could also make it a magic item. It's loot. Speaking of magic items, that's the fourth. That's the fourth term here. So really quick, page 134 starts the loot tables for gemstones and art objects, and it segments it by the
Value.
different amounts
Mm-hmm.
values that you can give your players. So there's different tables for each value. So 10, 50, 100, 500, and on for both gold pieces, I should say. And some of the stuff on here is like for 100 gold gemstones, you have jade, pearl, coral, amber.
One,
For
I love, yeah, I love throwing these out too because some of them, like, you get a star ruby. What the fuck's a star ruby?
what the
And
fuck is a star ruby?
but like I love that because again, instead of it being like, by the way, you get this cloak of protection, like I feel like we kind of there are favorite items that just keep getting hit.
Yeah.
You end up with like the art objects. Like I think to Purple's point, it really fills out your game and your lore because now you're dropping something that doesn't really make sense until you make it make sense. It's like, by the way, this is an ancient relic of the god Zeus, and you now have it. What? Like, that's
Yes.
super cool. Instead of like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the like ring of mind shielding. I'm like, I always have that. I love that item. I always have that item in my games.
Mhm.
I think it's fantastic.
I would say, and if you don't want it to be random, you can always not roll the
And
dice
just
on all
pick.
of these and just pick. Like, for instance, if they're going to be going to an ancient rundown temple that the god there is, the god of I don't know, fire giants, let's say, right? A gemstone that could probably be found there is fire opal. But if you roll on the table, you might not get fire opal. It's totally fine to flub it, right? Like,
Yeah, it's your game. It's your rules. Do what you
I
want.
think that's another thing we should discuss is Sarah, how often do you flub your rolls?
Oh no. Oh, are we gonna? I'm working on it. I actually don't flub my rolls too terribly often.
Mhm.
I think I the game I run, it's really hard for me to let go of the narrative that I'm trying to create. And sometimes the rolls are like, fuck you, and your 8 hours of prep, and my light just turned on all the way. So we're gonna fix that. But just, like, hey Sarah, we don't care about this thing that you worked really hard to make. So we're gonna goof that up. And if there's critical moments when that happens, I'll be like, no, like we're not doing it. But other
Mhm.
times I'm like, no, we're gonna let this play out. Purple mentions like just kill Rael. Yeah, 100%. I felt sick when I like rolled that damage, but it was like, yeah, yes, Cole, exactly. Change monster stats in the middle of a fight more than flubbing rolls, because it's like I don't, I and I gauge it too on player frustration. If we're not having fun, it's not worth it to me. Like,
Right.
I will flub a roll to like get us all back on board and like all feeling good about the game at any time. Like
Mhm.
if I don't intend to flub rolls, if I'm going in and being like, no, this is gonna be brutal and bad and ugly, I'll tell them in advance. But I think everybody flubs rules a little bit. I'd be highly surprised if anybody was like, nope, this is the way that it is always. And I see you kind of like smirking. Are you that person?
Listen, whenever I play D&D, uh, to me, GMing is it has to be a gentle conversation, let's say, between the roll of the dice, fate, and the narrative. And typically, what I like to do is kind of in the vein of Cole, um, where he likes to change monster stats in the middle of a fight more than flipping rolls. Um, I prefer to keep the encounter narratively how I want it to be. I don't necessarily flub rolls unless I feel like I need to uh to balance the encounter
Hmm.
or to make sure that
Convey a
uh
message, right?
yes, exactly.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So like for instance, if if you're fighting an ancient white dragon, um probably not gonna flood rolls unless it's to keep your players alive. you
Right.
know.
And that's what I mostly do. And I think that we can talk a little bit about encounter building and kind of the DMG guide here a little bit, naturally falling onto that. Uh, but that's how, most of the time how I flub my rolls is I go, oh no, like narratively this monster made sense.
How much
However,
damage?
how much damage did I just do? I'm gonna half that and then half that again and just look at them like, like just to
I've
protect
rolled
them.
all ones. What can I say?
There was one time that I like have zero shame about flubbing a roll. And I don't think I've never said this out loud. I was running back in the day when I first started GMing on stream TBR. I would play test my one shots before or my sessions beforehand because I just didn't feel comfortable like going on stream and doing the things. And I had a group of people that I played with. It was the very first session. I was introducing a very important NPC, D. Charles, and one of my players tried to wrestle her upon first encountering her. And 100%, I was like, yeah, let's roll strength contest. Let's do this. And I rolled the dice, didn't even look at it, lied. Like, because it was just like, I can't with you right now. Like, sometimes there are things that are too important. And I love hijinks, I do. But sometimes there are things that are just too important to me narratively to leave it up to a dice roll. And I want to communicate to my players, don't fuck around with D Charles. She'll wreck your shit. Like, yeah, like I'm not here to do that. Let's talk about encounters though. Uh, Encounters are hard, and I hate the challenge rating system. There, I said it.
Oh my
It's
god.
the worst.
Listen, I haven't found a single article or website or person or anything that can accurately describe to me how the challenge
How
rating
it
system
even
works.
works.
Um, I will say, uh, on the surface, I understand how it works.
But
Right?
why
It's like
fractions,
this.
really?
Yeah, this level of monster, this challenge rating of monster is appropriate, right, for a group of 5 certain level characters. So like a
Yes.
CR5
Yes.
monster is appropriate for a five five character level 5 group, essentially.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's for a medium difficulty, I will say.
Mhm.
Because it's like they could take this monster.
Yes. Yes. Uh
Once you get a little further into it, though,
it gets right. So first of all, shout out Kobold Fight Club for real. That's how I build all my encounters. Hell yeah. Because I love that I can go in and I can say, this is where they are. This is what level they are. Give me some options. Because the monster manual is a whole nother thing. Like, holy shit. And there are a lot of monsters to choose from. But it's yeah, like I feel, and Cole said it in chat, if you're not running deadly encounters, they're kind of like pointless a little bit.
Mhm.
Especially
Yeah.
like if you have a party of 4 or 5, like I never know how an encounter's going to go
Mhm.
ever. Like, and at this point as a GM, I just kind of I think that's where the role flubbing comes in is I set it up narratively, these monsters make sense. Rule wise, these challenge ratings make sense. And then once the actual encounter's going, it's just like flying by the seat of my pants because
Yeah.
I can't.
Well,
It's challenging. There are some
listen.
fights that I think that they're gonna blaze through, and it's like, oh no, we're gonna spend 2 hours on this, and it's like,
Yeah. This is why I think it's really important to have the mindset of I'm going to plan this in the way that I want it, But if it gets to the point where this is a little too much during session, I can always temper it down.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if you were planning a let's say a Lich's Tower, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like not like a Harper's Lich, but like a stereotypical Lich necromancer that just has a tower and endless undead that are roaming the grounds around it, right?
Yeah.
Um, Walking up to the tower, you'll probably be assailed by some medium level undead, maybe a few higher level undead as you grow closer and closer. And depending on your party's level, those could be a breeze. You could have like a mini boss, right? Where you choose a higher level undead. But even then, you can choose something or a couple things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my second point. That will just slow them down a little bit so that your
Yeah.
lich can complete their nefarious plot.
Yeah.
And then when they get to the lich, you can run that encounter, I
Yeah.
think, pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the hardest thing, right? The hardest thing is um, when you introduce multiple monsters, the difficulty level goes up dramatically
Yep.
because of action economy,
Action economy. Yes.
and that's why uh, higher level creatures, monsters, what have you, like the champion,
Mm-hmm.
which is just a normal humanoid fighter esque type champion, has like 3 attacks, and that's why they're so deadly. Is
Right.
because they can attack you 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
which is probably more than you can actually attack at this point.
Right.
So
And that D&D is just a matter of like who can number more than the other number. Like that's what it boils down to, right?
yeah,
And that's I think along your lines too, this is why I think more GMs need to leverage like monsters with legendary actions and layer actions and stuff like that. Like because those are other ways like you have them at your disposal, you don't necessarily need to use them. I found with my big bad fights having monsters with like layer actions and stuff really elevated the like encounters that I
oh
was
yeah,
in because it's like, oh, now the pressure's on. And I think the other thing too is like accounting for your players and their approach to the games and stuff. Straight up, I'm in a game that if I tried to GM one of my fellow players, I think my brain would break. I have no idea how my GM balances games for that specific guy cuz he just comes with this level of heat that's like, "Oh my god." Like it's nuts. Um and so I think giving yourself the flexibility of like we're just gonna roll with this like massive encounter, but like it could all go to shit. We're just gonna manage it as we
yeah.
go. That's the secret of GMing, guys. Nobody knows what they're doing. Like we're
No,
just
seriously,
we just
no
out
one really
here flubbing
knows.
rolls and doing our best. But I think it's important to talk about because like,
Uh, I
damn.
think I think a really uh, a really good point that Purple Phil actually just put in there is modifying existing monsters. Um,
Yes. Yes.
like using your own homebrew. Like for instance, you have a really tough like CR 15 martial type, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a caster or whatever. And your party, who could be like CR 15, 16, whatever, like they're gonna blow through this guy, right? Like your party has spells, yada yada. But what if this martial type found some sort of magical item that creates an anti-magic field?
Yes. Yes.
That
What if
takes
you
away a lot of power from your players.
what if you gave your lich lair act or not even your lich, what if you gave a white party moves that compels your like just give them whatever they need to be successful in the narrative that you want to build. Like Baron von Scouten, it was 100%. I took a white and I was like, how do I make this more dope? And I just layered on legendary actions, layer actions, all the things. And it ended up being super rewarding for me to play and like convey the narrative. And that was just something that we did. And it was great. 100% modify your monsters. That's what makes it fun. And also gives your campaign a different feel than others. I also do love running monsters as they're written because some of the monsters are really cool. They're super cool.
But honestly, like a lot of, and I will say this, I've done a lot of creation for like homebrew creation on D&D Beyond, and I will say D&D Beyond is really easy to create
Yes.
stuff in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like because you can just take an existing monster, copy it, and then work off of that,
Go
or you can
nuts.
create something completely from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love creating just random monsters here and there. If you go watch Monster Mash, which was my second one shot here at TPK, there were two monsters in there that I homebrewed myself. Um, that the players were actually playing. So it's really cool to be able to say, none of these monsters work in this situation. Fuck this. Throw the book out. And I will say, I literally throw the book out because on page 302 of the DMG, you have a monster. You have monster lists. You have all of these really cool tables and whatnot back here in the appendix of the DMG. Which, if you're going to use the DMG for anything, use it for the appendix because, guys, it's
There's
it's
really
it's a
helpful
lot.
things in here.
Yeah.
That's my thing is when I sit down to do my prep, I write out my narrative crap. I pull out the Dungeon Master guide, I flip to the tables and we go nuts cuz it's
Hmm.
like there's a lot of really helpful stuff in here. That is not
The
required, but will get you a head start.
the monster lists in the appendix are broken up to environment, which is already invaluable. Because for me, it's like, what creature is going to show up in this environment all the time? Like if I'm in the forest, I don't want a mountain or a desert environment monster or whatever, or like, well, I was going to say the Underdark, but also the Underdark can pop up anywhere. But if they do, there's an entrance to the Underdark somewhere nearby. So
Mhm. Mhm.
uh, there's just a lot of stuff here. Like for instance, let's just look at Arctic monsters, okay? Which is the very first thing in the monster list of the DMG. In
Mhm.
Arctic monsters, it is broken up into examples for challenge ratings between 0 and 20. Uh, for instance, it goes 0, which is a commoner or an owl, 1/8, which is a bandit or a tribal warrior.
I love the way
Um,
that they rate threats. I'm sorry, like a common villager is just as lethal as your standard owl. Like that's what is that?
yeah,
I love it. It doesn't make
yeah.
any sense,
I mean,
but I love
essentially,
it.
CR zeros are just like considered non-combatants,
They're
right?
like
Like,
they're like cotton candy. Like just
yeah,
if there's too much humidity, they're gone.
they're essentially they're considered like the feeble, the meek, the just the normal people with no fighting experience, right? Like even if you have just a big beefy boy,
Mhm.
like a stable hand, big beef monster, um, probably if he doesn't have any fighting experience, going up against your extremely well trained adventurers, probably not going to do that well. So obviously the CR gets pushed down a little bit. But then you have brown bears, half ogres, and one, bandit captains, berserkers, druids, blah blah blah, and two, and then it jumps pretty heavily. It gives you CR6, which is a mammoth or a young white dragon, and then CR9 is an abominable yeti. And then it jumps to 11, which is a Remoraz or a rock, and then it jumps to 13, which is an adult white dragon, and then 20 is an ancient white dragon. So it has a lot of a lot of variation there, and that's just Arctic monsters. It goes through Arctic, coastal, desert, forest, and forest is huge, by the way.
Right. There's so many monsters. There's so many monsters.
Yeah,
Get weird with your monsters.
and it
There's so
does
many.
actually, like, it breaks it up into environment in the first section, and then it breaks it up into challenge rating in the second section as you keep going, starting on page 306. It's all about challenge rating. Goes from 0 to 30. And then there's maps past that, which is really cool. Like, if you just need like a really quick, for instance, you're in a port city and you totally do not expect your players to try to get a, but they steal a boat and now they're fighting on the boat. Holy shit! What do I do?
What do I do?
Well, flip open to the DMG. You have a map,
Mm-hmm.
a battle map, I should say, for a boat, small boat, but a boat.
Mm-hmm. That's very
And then
good.
you have some sample caves. You have a sample dungeon. Um, you have a sample. You have 2 sample cities.
There's like that's my thing. There's maps. There's freaking maps in here, guys. Like they've got stuff. And again, I'm a little bit. If you ever get one of my goals as a GM is to run a little bit more loosely bound together campaign. And what I appreciate about this is like it gives you the framework to do that. Side quests, what kind of side quests you want to roll? Roll a D8. Like that's hugely helpful, and like just having this resource I think is great. It's not necessary, but it's one of those things where it's like this could really elevate what you think your game can be, if that makes sense. We're getting close to about an hour. Ty, I'm suggesting we take a quick break right now so we can just refill our coffee and do things. And then when we come back, I want to run through some of these easy to miss rules from Dungeons and Dragons. Let's get into the education. And then
Absolutely.
chat pop off, because what we'll do is we'll come back. We'll look. I want to hear what are your controversial takes on rules. What ones how do you interpret rules? One of the things I want to talk about when we come back is passive perception. So let's throw them in the chat. We're gonna take a quick break and we will be right back. And we're back.
Hello.
How was
Welcome
break,
back.
everybody? It's pretty good. It's pretty great.
Oh,
It's pretty
of
wonderful.
course, Sarah brings us back right as I'm in the middle of a giant yawn.
I just needed everyone to know what a big snuggly teddy bear you are. That's all. That's all.
I am feeling the no coffee right now. It is rough, guys.
I'm halfway through my pot and I'm like, yeah, man, let's go for a run. Not ever. Hate it.
This is just way too symbolic.
Like
Hey.
this is what I love about this dynamic is you really get to see like Ty,
Yes.
Sarah. there's no filter here. It's too early in the morning.
Hey, let's talk about these cheat sheets and easy to miss rules from D&D that Lukalak sent us over.
Yes, I also want to talk about what Purple sent in on page 249, damage severity versus level. So great for traps and monsters and damage that you wouldn't expect to have prepared. Yes, I love that. And that's my thing. Is just like I think the hardest part of GMing and like the big lie is that you have to be prepared for everything. And like you don't like improvising damage.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so 1d4 is like burn, or 1d10 burned by coals, 2d10 being struck by lightning. We've got damage severity, first to fourth level. If you want it deadly, 4d10s. Like it gives you the mechanics to like know what to do. Because a lot of times your players do buck wild shit, and you don't know how to respond. Boom, here you go.
Okay, but like
here you go.
This thing is crazy.
Did it just change your life forever, and you've had it on your shelf this entire time?
Honestly, this is amazing. Also, right above it is creature sizes, like a visual representation of creature sizes,
Yes.
which is really cool.
Mhm.
But hey, let's can
Mhm.
we acknowledge the level 17 through 20 deadly 24d10, y'all.
Jesus Christ.
24d10, and
Fair.
it includes the type of damage output that would create
Mhm.
this comes
Mhm.
from tumbling into a vortex of fire on the elemental plane of fire, or, and get this, being crushed in the jaws of a godlike creature or a moon-sized monster.
Yes, man. Well, and on the next page, this is something that I think is underutilized as well, is mobs. Like just swarming, cuz it can be, and counterbalancing is difficult because it is action economy and it is just like, okay, it's my turn to punch, now it's your turn to punch, now it's my turn to punch. Mob mechanics are
Yes,
fantastic because it's
yes.
like just get it all out of the way so you can keep moving the narrative forward. Like
I didn't realize that this was an actual thing in the DMG.
we're
I've
learning
been I've
together.
like see that's the thing. I uh I have been doing this for so long. I think maybe maybe I saw it on Critical Role or something and thought, oh, that's just a really cool house rule, a nice
Mhm.
mechanic that Matt uses. I didn't
Yes.
realize it was an actual thing. So this is really cool.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to read up more on it.
And I think you said it earlier, and I really think that that's a lot of people's experience with D&D is either they sit down at a table as a player, watch their GM do it and go, I think I can do that, or listening to shows or watching streams, and it's the same thing, like, oh, I get that, like I just sit there, and as long as I have like the same kind of level of knowledge. One big thing that I started out doing was running my monsters as if they were characters, kind of a deal, and like having way too much information on them. Like, no, they don't need that. Like, you don't need to get that in depth. But there's a lot in here. And Purple, thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic, and I love it very much. Yes, mob mechanics are so useful. Very, very good. I want to go to these easy to miss rules from D&D. There's a lot of them, and we're not going to cover all of them, but I want to go through
Yeah.
and talk about some of them. Starting with that there's two on here because I feel like these ones are always confusing. Casting a spell as a bonus action means you can
Right.
only cast cantrips for the rest of your turn. But
Listen,
note that it says bonus action and not cast two spells.
this is a
Uh,
dumb fucking rule.
No, I love it. If you have
No,
action
I
surge,
hate it.
then you can use that to cast two fireballs in one turn since no bonus action was used. And if you cast a bonus action spell like Healing Word and then use action surge, you can still only cast cantrips with both your actions.
I
Like,
see. Oh, I hate it
casting
so
spells
much.
has consequences. It takes resources, man.
I hate it so
You
much.
can't be popping off spells left and right.
Okay, but again, if you can only do a bonus action and then a cantrip, now again,
Mm-hmm.
um, I will say this: um, if you use, okay, so this is referring to leveled spells,
Mm-hmm.
which is another thing that needs to be clarified. If you use a bonus action cantrip, which I don't even know if that exists, um,
Yes, they do. Summon chair.
summon share. If you use a
Summon
bonus
chair.
action cantrip,
Uh-huh.
you can use a leveled spell as your main action. You can
Mm-hmm.
do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you use a bonus action leveled spell, 1 through 9,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you can only use a cantrip as your main action. So
Mm-hmm.
it's essentially just there's a cap being put on you for the
Mm-hmm.
amount of spellage you can do.
Mm-hmm.
There are classes, specifically a class, sorcerer, that allows
Mm-hmm.
you to change this.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, if you use Quickened Spell, which is a
Mm-hmm.
metamagic point you can use. You can spend a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level to change the action requirement to bonus action, or
Mm-hmm.
otherwise. So that way you could use a, let's say, an action spell, right? Um, like fireball, let's say, turn it into a bonus action, right? And then also use another cantrip. You can't, however, turn fireball into a bonus action spell and then also cast fireball again. Uh, I hate this. As someone who loves casting magic, I just want to be able to do what it simply says.
I
It's a
hear you.
casting.
I hear you, but from like the like damage output action economy perspective,
Yes,
you
yes.
have got to put limits on that, because again, if
Gotta,
your homies are just
gotta
out there
rein it in.
popping off like every 2 seconds, like we just had a conversation about balancing encounters, like you can't be throwing ancient white dragons at your team every time because they just have massive amounts of AoE, and
Yeah.
like it gets too crazy. So I'm a fan of this.
Speaking of balancing encounters, um, alternatively, if you're running a monster
Hmm.
that casts spells, you'll see that a lot of monsters, if they are not specific spellcasters, if it's an innate casting,
Hmm.
will say at will versus one a day.
Hmm.
If it's at will, it counts as a cantrip, no matter
Yep.
what it is.
Yep. Very good. This is going to lead us into a little bit of conversation. If you have dark vision, you treat darkness as dim light. This means you have disadvantage on perception checks involving sight and -5 to passive perception. You don't completely negate the need for light. Let's talk about passive perception and how it's kind of a dumb mechanic. And I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how I feel about like passive perception, passive insight, and all of these things. I think there are people who are naturally more aware, and I like that this mechanic is trying to convey that. But it feels really silly for someone with a passive perception to have like 23 and ever really need to roll passive perception. Like it just, I don't know. And I know I watched a really helpful video. I can't remember where it was, that kind of broke it down a little bit more about how it actually should be used as according to the DMG. And I'm actually going to start looking that up so we can have that to talk about it. But it's that thing where like, man, like, ugh, it gets in the way. Like one of my players has a freaking like 23 passive and perception, and it's like, yeah, you walk in the room and you see all my, on one hand you walk in the room and you see everything, so I don't have to worry about you missing it. On the other hand, you walk into the room and you see everything, and then I don't have to miss it. It's like, dang it, the pits, the pits.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, Death Dice and Dungeons. Two helmed horrors, which are CR4 monsters, versus 6 level 4 characters. Too much. Uh, the DMG and challenge rating, plus probably even D&D Beyond, would tell you that this is a deadly encounter. However, it is not a deadly encounter. You're fine. I would say go for it, but again, if the intent is for the characters to be able to beat this and you want them to win, um, then you can always just flub the roll. It's okay. Um, I think that so for I think the different visions you can have, right? Tremor sense, blind sight, dark vision, true sight, all of these cool things.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're really interesting. I think they're
Yeah.
really neat. I do not believe they should hamper on storytelling if you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
I think Luca Locke is um, very justified in saying that all of her players have perfect, and I will say this again, perfect dark vision. Perfect dark vision, advanced dark vision, means that you do not treat darkness as dim light, you treat it as normal. There is actually, I wonder if I can find that in the, I'm sure it's in the player's book, not the DMG, but um there's probably a list of all the different like sights, all the different visions you can have. And there is a difference between like um a monster who has lived in the darkness their entire life, right? And if that monster, or lived in dim light, I should say, their entire life, because they'll be able to see perfectly in dim light, and probably even perfectly in darkness as well. But if you have something like a Remoraz, or a purple worm that spends its entire life burrowing, that that creature is probably going to have a different type of sense, right? Like blind sight or tremor sense, which tremor sense is really cool because it's essentially like it's like Toph from Avatar: The Last Airbender, just being able to feel the vibrations in the ground. That's why when you're traveling through a mountainous area and you feel the ground start to shake, you need to you need to stand perfectly still, because if you move a muscle while the Remoraz is moving past you, you it will probably feel you. So
100%. And Chum added a valid point. Like, it really is like a narrative thing, right? It's giving you control to say, like, because I do think one of the great tragedies of GMing is like, I have crafted this beautiful narrative. The saddest thread I ever read was like, I built this tavern. There was like 10 people inside. They could talk to like any of them, and it would spin them off in a different side quest and all of these things. And I said, players, you're in a tavern. Like, what do you do? And they're like, we leave. And it's like, no. And I think
yeah,
passive perception kind of helps with like, by the way, with your passive perception, you notice this person has an item on them that you would like very much. Like, it
yeah,
helps kind of pull them back in. But a lot of the times I feel like, again, it forcing rolls over passive, like, I don't know. It gets a little wonky for me.
yeah. I think
Gets a little wonky.
a good way to describe passive perception is your character is very clearly doing something else, right? Or not paying attention, well, quote unquote, not paying attention whatsoever.
Mhm.
Um, However, your character is either antsy enough and always looking around, or just naturally predispositioned with the ability to hear, see, smell, taste, or whatever sort of senses are needed to identify what's going on. Um, like if you have a 23 passive perception or higher, or well, 23 is an arbitrary number. Um, your character is going to be like, oh, that butterfly over there flapped its wings about a mile away. Like it's you're going to be able to see some pretty minute details. But that again, all of your passive skills are up to the DM to
Right.
use for
It's
storytelling.
interpretation, right?
Yeah,
Um 100%. Uh, and I feel, oh, this was the other thing too. Because there's like passive insight and like insight checks. The way like a lot of times people are like, that guy's sus. I'm gonna roll a vibe check. I'm gonna see if he's lying to me, and all of the things. And the way I'm deciding to like interpret insight checks is like how they work in real life. Like when you roll an insight check, you don't like see into that, like when you're sus of someone in real life, you don't see into their mind's eye and understand their motivations. You might notice like their shirt is torn or they're breathing hard or like that, like there are things. I feel for me an insight check really is a different kind of like passive, or not passive perception, or investigation, right? Like it's designed to give you intel on the person, that will make them more willing to assist or keep you from like engaging in a negative way, right? Like
Exactly.
it's not necessarily now you understand from the beginning of time what motivates this person and why they are the way they are. It's more
Mhm.
like this person's like talking to you. He seems really like suspicious. You roll an insight check. You notice like on his lapel, he has this like symbol that you recognize and you know the order of. It's to give you information to make it easier to interact with that person. And I like playing it that way rather than just like uh yeah, no, you know everything about this person now because it's again it's that thing where it gets hard to balance a little bit, but that's one thing that like I think there's a lot more opportunity to get weird
I
with
think it's
insight checks.
I think it's more especially with like intelligence and wisdom specific roles, like
Mm-hmm.
specific passive. It's more like, okay, you have the big picture now. Like you're able to sum this up you're able to sum this up about the big picture based on what your general passive skill is. If
Mm-hmm.
you want to get more of the minute details, however, I'd
Right.
like you to roll an active check.
Mm-hmm.
um, a really cool thing, if you want to kind of relate that train of thought to a specific mechanic in D&D, go check out detect thoughts, the spell detect thoughts, because
I
it is
love
very
detect
much,
thoughts
yeah, it's very much a okay, you cast this spell, you can now read people's
immediately.
surface thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get a general idea, blah 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 blah, and they won't know, no one will be the wiser. However, if you'd like to pry deeper, you can make them uh roll a save,
Mm-hmm.
and you can dive deeper into their thoughts, but that is going to be an active thing that you have to choose to do. And if you
Mm-hmm.
fail, then they'll know that someone was prying into the thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that those kind of two mechanics go very hand in hand: passive versus active anything, really.
Yeah. Let's talk about passing checks or failing checks. Critical fumbles aren't a thing. A 1 on a die is only an automatic failure for attack rolls. There's no such thing outside of homebrew, of course, as a critical fail or success on skill checks. Uh and I think that that's very important because I think a lot of us are just like conditioned to see the 1 and be like it automatically fails. Most of the time it probably does, but I think the skill check mechanics can often get a little wonky, like in the way that they're interpreted, right? Like you're trying to stealth up to a place, you roll a 1, you have a +2, so you got a 3. Like that doesn't I think it's always kind of interpreted as like you fucking biff so hard and everything's ruined. It's like I kind of like the interpretation. It's like no, you successfully sneak in, but you don't notice the person sneaking up behind you because you were so focused on getting in.
Right.
And like how you flavor your consequences for less than ideal rolls, right?
Yeah. Or how about a rogue, a high level rogue with a +15 stealth that's sneaking through the center of like a low level town.
Mm-hmm.
Like just trying to get past town guard. Even if you roll a 1, it's just gonna automatically succeed. And you'll
Yeah.
see a lot of DMs are just like, don't even roll, you know?
Oh, see, I love making them roll anyways because then they're like, "Wait, why am I rolling for this?" It's just like I shouldn't have to roll for this, and it's like, "Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Get wrecked."
But also, I think it's important to note that specifically what isn't said is there is no automatic failure for a saving throw too,
Mhm.
which I think is really cool,
Mhm.
especially for like if you have a +9 to your saving throw or whatever, and the DC is 10, you know.
Yep. Yep.
Like
Mhm.
for instance, really really important to note. For instance, if somehow you are a spellcaster with proficiency in Constitution, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
You're talking about my girl Cascade.
yeah, I'm talking about concentration checks
Yep.
that are, and if you take damage that is less than 20 points of damage, if
Mhm.
you have a +9 to your Constitution saving throw,
You're
you
fine.
automatically succeed on any concentration check that is forced due to 20 or less damage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like that's really important to note, right? Because
Correct.
otherwise, if you roll a 1 and you think that, oh, this is a critical failure, you're going to fail that concentration check. That's not a fact.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There are no checks other than there's nothing that you can critically fail except for an attack.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple.
Yes. Another bullet point here that I feel like this is under you, at least in the games I've played. Let's talk about cover. Half, 3/4, etc., etc. Half cover gives +2, 3/4 gives +5 bonus, respectively, to both armor class and dex saves. Cover is one of those rules that, like, on the surface, I'm like, I don't care about this rule. But then in practice, I'm like, oh no, I super care about this rule. Like, it's a cool rule, and it's like, you should use cover. Yes, magic. People who are not rogues, you can use cover too. Like, use cover, man, because like that also helps in a lot of regards to like encounters. Like, use this thing to your advantage. Like, it's a good mechanic. And it always irritates me when people are like, no, I'm gonna like hit you. I narratively said I was behind barrels. Doesn't matter. Like, no, I was behind barrels. Gosh dang it.
Ooh. And I will say, important thing to note: half and 3/4 cover gives you +2, +5, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
If you have full cover, full
Mm-hmm.
cover gives you like you cannot be hit by projectiles
Yep.
or ranged anything,
Yep.
and you automatically succeed on dex saves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Use
So
cover.
like if you are full cover behind a column and a dragon is breathing fire at you, it's going to be split by the column.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah. It's
um I think that's really cool. I didn't realize it also gave you a bonus to dex saves. I always thought it was
mm-hmm.
just AC. But one of my favorite things is, especially with kind of more obscure rules like this, you can tell in your party, if you're DMing, you can tell which of your players has not read their materials because you'll pull out something like cover during a battle for your monsters, right? And they're just like, what? And you're like, yeah, the AC is increased like 5. I know you hit on a 17 before, but now their AC is 22, man. I don't know what to tell
right.
you.
Right. Yep.
But it's also like it's so logical too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're standing behind something that's going to block a projectile, your AC is going to go up, your dex save is going to go up. I think it's a really cool mechanic.
I know
Cover
that's right. It's
is really cool.
underutilized. I think I know I underutilize it. Like, I'll cop to
Absolutely.
that. But like, it's a great mechanic, and I think it's one of those rules that gets lost in the like the jargon of D&D, because there's a lot of rules, right? But like, it gets weird. It gets weird. I don't know. Ty, pick one from this list. There's a lot of good options. What do you want to talk about?
There's a lot of stuff that could be talked about. Like it really kind of depends on what you're interested in. For instance, if you ever wanted to harvest poison from a creature, it's a DC. It's a nature check. I would say, depending on the creature, the DC would probably go up or down. Apparently, in the DMG, it's a DC 20 nature check.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say like the difference between harvesting poison from like a rattlesnake versus a like giant gargantuan monster is probably a little different, you know. Like if like a green dragon or something like that, that has poison, bro. Let's see.
This is one that I really like. A long rest can be interrupted by up to an hour of heavy activity, like combat, casting spells, traveling, and still provide benefits. So, like, I think a lot of times it's like, did you have, and that's the other thing too, like, rounds are 6 seconds, like, managing that narratively, whatever. You have a 10-minute fight in the middle of the night. Yeah, man, you still gonna be able to go back to sleep and get that good Z's.
God, if you have a 10-minute fight, I feel so bad
Dude,
for
that's a
the
lot.
party and
That's a
and the
fucking
DM.
lot.
Like
Mm-hmm.
that is a 10-minute fight is 60 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
But like think about
you,
that. But think about that, right? In the context of this, like it can be interrupted by up to an hour
yeah,
and still
yeah.
receive benefits of
So
the long rest.
hey, get some of that 600 rounds of combat, guys. But also,
Woo!
I think what that also kind of implies is, let's say you're in the middle of a rest and you get attacked, and you can't resolve this attack by fighting, so you have to run away, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't get away until after that hour.
Mm-hmm.
You have to restart your rest.
Yes. Also, magic, yes, long rest does not need to mean 8 hours of sleep. It just means rest, whatever that means.
I think actually that is a good point. There does need to be a certain amount of sleep. I believe it's 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be resting for 8 hours. So
Mm-hmm.
like you can do something for 2 hours, like in between the rest, like take watch or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you do need to sleep for a certain amount of time. What that certain amount of time is in the DMG, I'm sure it's something, but again, I would leave that up to the DM. Really, I think that's more of like a personal preference. Like for instance, a lot of people think that you really only need 6 hours of sleep. Some people are like, let's do 10 hours. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm. 100%. Or if you're like me in real life, let's roll with 2.5. It's gonna be fine. Everything's
okay, but
uh
it's either 2.5 or it's like 17, right?
oh
Like,
yeah, there's no in between. we're running on empty all the time. Here's one that I think one of the big challenges with D&D is all the dice rolls and keeping track and all this stuff. Any spell attack that affects multiple creatures at the same time only has one damage roll, which is applied to each target. Most know this rules with spells like Fireball, but it also applies to like Magic Missile. Like you're not rolling individual, you're
really?
rolling one. Yes, yes. One damage
So
for
the
all targets affected.
so the McElroys got it right.
The McElboys got it right. That's the one fucking rule. Everything
One
else,
thing, one
everything
thing, and it
else.
wasn't on purpose. That
Yes,
is insane. I
100%.
did not know
Mm-hmm.
that. So that
Yes.
applies to not only DMs but
Yep.
also the players.
Yep. Any spell that attacks, like that affects multiple things, you roll one damage to affect everything by that one spell. And then you call it.
Okay, so this one I'm going to say is probably controversial, because I can see reasons why this should not be the case, right? Let's say you, like, obviously it's the same spell, it's originating from the same source, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
understand why the damage would be equal. However,
Mm-hmm.
from a combat standpoint, um, if you roll a one on damage
Mm-hmm.
versus you roll a one, a seven, and a five on damage, I can see where you would want to do that.
No, I get it. Like you want, like if you have a bad roll, this rule sucks. Like
Yeah.
it's just like, well, I burned my freaking level 4 magic missile and I rolled a 1. So that sucks. But like a little bit,
Ooh,
that's the game. You know what I mean?
can we talk, speaking of damage, I want to talk about crits.
I
Okay.
love crits. Crits, crits, crits.
Uh I want to posit this theory.
Hmm.
I think crits should be done differently.
Let's go. Let's talk about it.
I think it should be you roll a crit.
Uh-huh.
Immediately you get two damage dice of your type, right? Like
Uh-huh.
obviously it still like doubles the amount of dice, right?
Uh-huh.
One of those dice is max damage.
You think you should have like Nah, dude, you're already getting like double damage. Nah, dude, you're getting crazy. See,
No,
I could see like a uh I'm gonna pull some monster of the week shit. I could see some advanced success where like you can force a monster where you want. There's like a bonus effect,
Okay.
right? I'm cool with
Yeah.
that. Like I'm cool with it being like you crit, so you get your damage, and then you can get like a certain amount of whatever. And maybe you manage that. Maybe that's not even a crit. If you beat something's AC by a certain number, then you can like get more.
That
That's
is,
advanced success. You can
yeah.
narratively push it where you want it, draw attention, or something like that. The
That
problem is
was that
there's
was the other theory I had too.
yeah
Like you could crit based on like you beat the AC by
AC by
10
so
or something
much.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I could see that. My only issue with that is that there are like moves like that certain classes have that give them the innate ability to do those kinds of things. And it kind of would be the pits to be like, you picked this class to be able to do this thing. By the way, your wizard friend can also just like body check them because they crit hit with their like scorching ray or something. You know what I mean? Like there's
Hmm.
eh, I hesitate because the way Dungeons and Dragons is built is so many things are class specific,
Right.
uh, and I would hate to be like to kind of break that. But I'm 100% a fan of like if you crit, go hard. Like
Yeah.
you got that number, man. Let's go. Let's do
I
it.
think the actual theory I had, because I think I saw this somewhere. I can't remember exactly where. I think they wanted to split it up between a normal crit, how we describe a crit nowadays, where it's just you double the amount of dice. Um, I think that was if you beat the AC by a certain number.
Hmm.
And then if you roll a normal crit, which is a 20 on a d20 for most classes, or a 19, 18, or 17 for champion fighter,
Hmm.
um, that's when you max out one of the dice or
Hmm.
half the dice.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's really cool in practice because it's like crits become way more dangerous at that point.
Hmm.
You feel like, don't get me wrong, whenever people get crits, it's still like
Yeah.
but also like
Critical.
it takes away the feeling of getting a crit and rolling a one on damage dice.
Oh yeah, but when you crit and you get like bare minimum damage, that
Yeah.
feels bad, man. So again, I'm 100% about making crits feel a little more special, like adding that like here's a list of things that you can do, whether that's like I mean within reason, right? As so long as you're not like overbalancing in a way that's gonna like uh, screw over your other players. I'm 100% about adding that
Right.
like flavor text or like there's additional bonuses, right? Like
Mhm.
um
And I think it's important to note that the monsters get this as well. So
correct. One
yeah.
thing that would be really cool is if you crit, like one of the bonuses you can get is like an immediate like successful insight check to like a weakness, whether that's
Okay.
like this person is weak to this kind of
Or
damage.
you give them a weakness.
Right.
Like
Right.
your
You've
crit
slashed
and
them.
this is yeah,
Yep.
this is where
Mhm.
like the have you ever used random crit tables?
I know I've played in games where they've been used,
Mhm.
and random like fumble tables on attacks,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
shit's rough.
I'm not the biggest fan of them, to be honest, but the
Mm.
idea behind them is really interesting to me. Um, your attacks physically altering the thing that you are fighting. For
Mhm.
instance, you score a crit. That's a heavy blow. You are sundering armor. You are chopping off limbs with this blow. AC should go down.
Yeah. Okay, can we talk about hit points really quick? Can we talk
Yeah.
about like okay, so this is something as a GM I struggle with like AC hit points the whole 9 yards versus like if my monster crits you, like if you take a full long sword to the face, right? And then like I narratively speaking, I hate like your wounds. You get like 3 hit points back. Like you like there's I think it's really challenging as a GM with encounters where you devastate your players. You're hitting hard and fast and like having consequences that carry over from those encounters, right? Like, nah, dude, you got fucking crit hit by a lich. That's not going to be better because you took a night. You know what I mean? Like, there needs to be consequences. And there's one thing about D&D that I feel like it's hard to like carry that narrative weight over from
Yeah,
session to session. Like I
I
love the
think
idea of your AC is
yeah,
fucked. Like
yeah,
that's a great like consequence or something to kind of help carry over cuz the idea cuz it at some point it just turns into like we're exchanging blows and then the blow exchanging is done, that phrasing. But then like it's you have to like move on, right? But it's it's challenging from a narrative perspective, and I think
right,
this is an area that Dungeons and Dragons is relatively weak compared to other systems.
right.
Is like I have 72 HP, and as long as I have more than half, like then I'm good and great. And it's like but you just lost half of your health from one hit. In real life, that would be crippling. You would be crippled. Like. eh, I, you wouldn't walk the same, my dude. Like,
Yeah.
and I wish that there was more in Dungeons and Dragons to help facilitate that conversation and that kind of
Yeah.
like character building, other than just the player and the GM narratively
So
deciding you have a limp now. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
let me ask you, and I think no, I need to think about what I was gonna say. But let me ask you, in terms of health,
Mm-hmm.
because something you said gave me this idea. In terms of health, what is your physical manifestation of health? What does health represent to
Um, I think this is open to interpretation, right?
you?
Like, I think because the HP stat is based on your constitution, I think for me, what that is it's more like a hardiness
Mhm.
type of a deal. Like, it's how well you maintain your body. And I want to be very clear, body type does not determine health. So it's more like dwarves are very hardy folk. They've got good constitution. They're
Sturdy.
sturdy, right?
Yeah.
Versus like a human wizard, like they don't. It's just different. And I feel like hit points is the problem. This is how many hit points you can take, or health points you can take.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's just it's very video game mechanic. Like it's your little green life bar that you can open a fairy and refill, right? Like, and it just doesn't quite translate well, which is why I prefer systems like Monster of the Week and Harm. You have a set amount of harm that you can take for the duration of that character's like existence. And like if you like go to the hospital or rest, it will go down. But like regardless of who you are, this is how much health you have. Like, let's talk about Harper's, like Veldani's health versus Gruff's health. A little bit that makes sense. He's a Minotaur,
Yeah.
right? He's gonna
Yeah.
be able to take more punches than my girl can. But
He's a big boy.
but at the same time, like all it's gonna take is one hit to the right place to like level either of them. And I feel like
Mhm.
hit points don't really tell that story. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
So
and especially where
this
they
is
increase level over level. It's just an arms
yeah.
race.
Yeah. So this is where I come in on hit points. When you are above half health, um, I think your character is narrowly dodging or taking very minor bruises to all of the attacks. Like, obviously, mechanically, the attacks hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we think about it realistically, uh, at half health, you become bloodied, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that means at half health, you start really showing the effects of these attacks, right? There's maybe one attack that has slashed you, and you're starting to bleed a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then when you hit 0, it's like one of those chance moment mortal blows.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So to me, it's more like if you think about it story wise, right? You think about it from fighting just in general, like think about boxing or MMA.
Sure.
Uh, any and obviously like it's a little different with swords, but any punch, right, in boxing and MMA could be the last punch.
Yes, this is yes. You only have so many fights in you. Like
Yeah.
this is one thing that I feel like D&D does not do a good job of because like your players can just combat, and it's like no. In real life, you only have so many fights in you. You only have your body can only sustain so much trauma over the course of life. And like yes, magic's involved. But like when you can just take punches to the end of time, it just changes things. And really quickly, shock point. Yes, it also describes a character's stamina and luck, and that's something I was going to touch on. Is like I really think like if you take so much damage, instant level of exhaustion, like period, or like disadvantage on saving throws. Like there has to be like some sort of narrative consequence because I think a lot of times people are like, if we just get in there and we win by like 1 hit point, then we win and everything's fine. And it's like, well, yes, but there's no long term effects. And I hate that. And I hate that you have to kind of like narratively be like, by the way, here's these rules that
Yeah,
I just
and I
made.
think maybe we can chalk that up to there's magic, right? Or and I think that's probably the intent there. But at the same time, let's talk about psychological effects
Ah, okay.
because magic's not going to cure your fucking trauma.
Yeah, right.
So um let's say this, and this is something I actually this is what I was going to say earlier.
Mm-hmm.
If during a fight you take more than uh 50 hit points in a
Percent.
single attack,
Mm-hmm.
um or well, either percentage, it would be a rule that's a little flexible here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it's homebird.
Mm-hmm.
If you take more than 50 damage or a certain percentage of your health in a single attack,
Mm-hmm.
or someone crits on you,
Mm-hmm.
take a level of exhaustion.
100% agree. 100% because like that's again, I think exhaustion's an underutilized mechanic as well. I think most of the time people view that as like something that happens in travel or other places. And like really like levels of exhaustion, they're great. Like narratively speaking, and they do add that level of like oh fuck kind of there that's where you're going to get a lot of depth as a GM to help balance your encounters. Are your players just powering through your encounters even though you have them set to max deadly? Start utilizing levels of exhaustion because that's going to give you that little bit of edge and again make the players like approach combat differently. Like we all talk about death drifters or you know like people who just come into D&D and like I punch all the things and I nuke all the places. Use the mechanics to curb that, right? Because to your metaphor, a boxing match, if they know that like, and I think Pat dropped the quote from the HP the history of HP, right? Like what is
Mhm.
it? A single successful attack was all it took for a soldier to die. If you can
Yeah.
communicate that to your players somehow mechanically, like it will help the narrative flow and like it will help your game, right? Because I
Mhm.
think I
Another
it's
thing
oh go for it, go for it.
in that same vein,
Mm-hmm.
in medieval combat, right, and even less today combat, but I would
Mm-hmm.
say like World War I and before, there's an old
Mm-hmm.
adage that says a wounded soldier is just as good as a dead soldier,
Interesting.
especially in medieval combat, because essentially what it's saying is you don't necessarily need to finish off uh, soldiers, because what are
Sure.
they going to do? Are they going to get up on their hobbled legs and come and fight you effectively?
No. But to that point, I like Chum's thing where it's like, but yeah, we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's a suspension of disbelief. I want them to feel like superheroes. They can like summon meteors from the sky. Like it a little bit reality doesn't apply. And it's
Yeah.
yes, correct. Like absolutely. I think more for me it's there's a balance to be struck, right? Like
Mhm.
I think that there's an idea of I mean, it really depends on what kind of game you want to run. Are you running a dungeon dive where it is just like you're Diablo 2ing your way through a dungeon, just like kill all the things, take all the loot, go buck wild? Are you running a more like political intrigue kind of long-term campaign where you want there to be like consequences and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Totally
Again,
different experience. Mm-hmm.
most important thing for a DM to do: establish expectations and boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Because your players may want one thing and you want the other, but as soon as you have that conversation, you'll be able to plan much more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, in general, I prefer more realism in my TTRPGs just because I don't know. I think it makes for really kind of emotional and gritty storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I just ran a Scooby Doo one shot yesterday, so like, it's all about expectations, you know.
Yes, yes. I feel like every murder and coffee we're gonna have that like conversation of talk to your players. What kind of
Mhm.
game do you want to run? Like what rules are important to you? Because I
Ooh,
think a lot of the times you're not gonna have a fun time if somebody comes in and they're like, no, I want that superhero experience. I want to be able to blast all the things and have zero consequences. And you're trying to run like a gritty survival, like I'm gonna need you to roll to see if your rations are still good. Like, you know what I mean?
right,
Like
yeah. And
there's
I'm
a
not, I'm not saying that you should lean extremely into realism.
mm-hmm,
Again,
mm-hmm.
this is a fantasy setting.
Yes,
I think there just needs to be a good. To me, there
a
should be a
good
good blend.
balance. Mm-hmm. I completely
Um,
agree.
I want to point out. Let's. I know that. Oh God, where is it? Purple Phil wanted to talk about XP and leveling, which
Oh,
is
let's talk
on
about XP and leveling. How
which
do
is
you
on page 260, by the way, Sarah.
Yes, yes, I will turn to
Um,
there now because I have
but
opinions.
really quick, Pat 66. You bring up an interesting point. A wounded soldier is a resource drain. So many times it is better to severely wound a soldier instead of killing them. Um, I wonder, Sarah, can you think of a mechanic that you could put into D&D that if one of your party members suffers a critical hit, it affects the other party members? For instance,
How
a
would I do
blow
that?
so gruesome and terrifying, or
Uh,
something happening like a death.
yeah, frightened mechanic.
Yeah.
You're frightened. Like
Mhm.
you're freaked out. You just watched your tank get devastated. That would be
Mhm.
fucking terrible. And that's my thing is like I think a
Oh
lot of
God,
times
XCOM panic.
right. There's a lot of like that's my thing is we often view status effects or exhaustion as they only apply when there's a move that applies them, right? Like they're only relevant when like I cast
Sheep.
charmed, you know what I mean? And that's why
Mhm.
you're charmed. Like no, I honestly think a little bit like if someone is so if someone rolls such a great deception check and it passes someone's passive like perception or insight by a certain number, again, like flavor that is like this person is essentially charmed by you. Like they just
Mhm.
think you're wonderful. Like utilize those status effects more because I think a little bit like that's going to create a more dynamic experience. And while we're talking about that, charmed means they can't attack what charmed you. Like,
Mhm.
and let's see, can't attack what charmed you, and charisma checks have advantage. In other words, it doesn't do more than the condition says, even though the name of the condition can be misleading. Like, I think
Mhm.
a lot of times it's like, I'm charmed, I'm effectively out. No,
Right. So
no.
essentially, that's where the different levels of charm spells come into effect. You
Mm-hmm.
have charm, just the status charm, but then you
Mm-hmm.
have spells that charm. And when you are charmed, this also happens. And then you have like advanced charm spells like dominate, And dominate is exactly what
Yes.
it sounds like.
Yes.
You
Like,
literally take control of this creature
right.
or this person.
Right. There's depth in the mechanics, and I think a lot of times we just see it at surface level and just take that. But like,
Yeah.
understand those status effects, like use them, because like as a GM, like a lot of times when you have a Death Drifter party or you just feel like you're not able to control the narrative in a way that you want, and so you feel like you're having to strong arm your players with like your flubbed rolls or your narrative prowess, you're missing half of your tools box of like, no, listen, man, you've been like zerg rushing everything, you're tired. Like, you just are. Take that level of exhaustion, please. And like, just work with what you're given. Let's talk about experience points really quick. Do you use them, Ty?
Experience points?
Mm-hmm. Or
It
do you?
really depends. It really depends.
Mm-hmm.
If I am playing here's where I think experience versus milestone comes into play. Or at least in my mind, this is the best way to use either or. If you are playing a grindy dungeon crawly, I'm going to kill all these monsters in succession war game.
Mm-hmm.
I think experience points is the right way to go
Mm-hmm.
for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you are playing a story based narrative, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like milestone is probably much better. I
Mm-hmm.
do think, however, it is important for the DM to manage the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the way I run the Bard's Refrain is a blend. I track the experience of the monsters and the encounters that I give. So I always have an idea of that. So if they reach a point with like XP, it makes sense that they should have leveled up and they don't. I will apply that. And then milestones, I don't like. I feel like I do, and at the same time I don't. Cause like, so let's read it. You can also award XP when characters complete significant milestones. Like accomplishing one in a series of goals necessary to complete the adventure, discovering a hidden location or piece of information, reaching an important destination. And then there's benefits that you can give. For me, I also do it like if you handle a situation quote unquote successfully. Here's this NPC that could have died or lived. You saved them. Like that, you are closer to leveling up, right? Like I view it leveling up as rewarding for like successfully solving my narrative puzzle a little bit, right? Like, and some of the times too, like it's not based on anything I've thought of in advance. Like my characters are
Right.
gonna take this talking painting of a god outside of a temple, and they're just gonna take him with him. Yeah, I'm gonna reward that shit with some like milestone level XP because that was dope. That
I
was
think
dope.
I think you um, do very well with the combination between milestone and experience points. I typically, if I were to run a campaign,
Mm-hmm.
I would keep track of all of that myself to keep an eye on it. Um, do you don't tell your players to take experience, do you?
No.
Okay. So
I fully
you're
track
keeping
it.
track of it, but
Mm-hmm.
you kind of tell them when to
I'll
pause.
notify them. I'll notify them like, hey, by the way, like you're leveling up. Like
Yeah.
but it is based. It's maybe it seems arbitrary, but like sometimes it's based on narrative arc. Like
Uh-huh.
we just dialed shit up. You now have a larger picture of the narrative. I'm gonna bump you up several
Yeah.
levels because I can do that. I'm the GM. But I also
Which
like
is story based advancement.
story based, right? But at the same time, like if they've been like doing all these random encounters and they've been racking up XP, yeah, I want them to like benefit from that. Not just because like I feel like they should level up. Like I want there to be kind of a metric so they feel like they've earned it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um and for instance, there's experience points where you can give experience based off of combat. To Sarah's point, you can also use non-combat challenges.
Puzzles, NPC interactions, like particularly challenging ones too, right? Like if they navigate a situation well and they demonstrate that they narratively like can handle those kinds of things, to me it's like, GM, yep, they can handle this kind of thing, time to level up and take them to the next kind of interaction, right? Also, encounters, this is something that I've learned from one of the GMs that I play with. Encounters does not mean combat. Encounters does not mean combat. Encounter could be a puzzle. It could be a difficult conversation. It could be a chasm. Like, encounter does not equal combat. And I love that mentality.
Yes, very important. And then real quick, the DMG also goes into milestones, which is like if you are doing like story-based advancement, you can use milestones as like, this is the plot, and this is the segmented portions of the plot where you're gaining the experience. But again, experience is really only useful for the GM to keep track of, or if you're using the kind of dungeon crawling mechanic where you're telling the players they've gained experience. Harper Investigations uses session-based advancement, which is a rewarding levels based off of the amount of sessions you play. And then obviously story-based advancement is the GM deciding when the characters will level based off of important story things happening.
Yep. Yeah, that magic, you could do a mix where a combination of events would equate to a level up rather than just a point in story. That's 100% how I run mine. Like, there's like 3 triggers in a game that I run for leveling up. You've achieved the appropriate level of experience. Because I track that. You have narratively hit a point in the story where I want to introduce tougher monsters, so I need you to be tougher, and you've survived this long, or you have creatively, like a little bit rule of cool, you've navigated these interactions, these puzzles, these things in different ways for me to justify, like, yeah, like you handled that well. Like, because if your party's running around, like Al made the point earlier, let's see, the thing with my players is they miss a lot of opportunities for game because they have tunnel vision for main missions, and they equate that with milestone levels. If your party's just running around, like, senselessly doing things, are they gaining experience? Like, I feel like thinking of experience in like life experience, right? Like, are they encountering new things? Are they learning? Are they growing? Because leveling up is supposed to demonstrate growth. Like, not necessarily just like, I have this new move now, so I can punch many more times. Like, it's about growth. So if your party is running into combat, solving it the same way over and over and over again, does that demonstrate growth? I don't think so. So looking at it from that standpoint, like, what is your party learning as they go? If they're not learning anything, why would they level up? Just because they punched so many times? Sure, maybe their strength goes up. I don't know. I don't think that necessarily means you now unlock this next level of abilities. You know what I mean?
Purple Phil asks, how do you handle XP and missing players? Well, Purple Phil, let me tell you, because I have it open in the DMG right now. Typically, adventurers earn experience only for encounters they participate in. If a player is absent for a session, the player's character misses out on the experience points. And I will note, it is important to note that this is for experience giving. Okay. This does not really apply to session-based advancement or story-based advancement. Over time, you might end up with a level gap between the characters of players who never miss a session and characters belonging to players who are more sporadic in their attendance. Nothing is wrong with that. A gap of, okay, this is where I do not agree with the ruling. It says a gap of 2 or 3 levels between different characters in the same party isn't going to ruin the game for anyone.
I'm sorry, but if that gap is between 1 and 3, it absolutely, or like 3 and 5, it absolutely will. Somebody's gonna feel real sad.
God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's nuts. Essentially, how do you handle it? It's up to you. It's up to you, Purple.
I feel like, so yes, it's up to you. So here's my take on it. If you have a missing player, In my mind, it's kind of like, yes, they're missing a session. Maybe I'm too nice. I don't know. I'm gonna be like, okay, like what was your player up to during that time that we can still get you where you need to be,
Yeah.
right? Like, sometimes you just have to work with them where they're at. Split party mechanics that's one that's difficult too. But again, I think that's where you introduce the idea of encounters, not combat, right? Not like you've split the party. One person is actually going to like chase down real information or a real planned encounter, and the other one's gonna, I don't know, fuck right off over here. I once had an encounter that was incredible. We split the party, and I don't know if this was planned, but this is kind of how I would think you could flavor it, right? Like one group went off and did in fact like encounter like a main narrative NPC and had the conversation, blah blah blah. Another group split off, and there was just a chest. I think my GM turned it into a mimic. Then, like because we split the party, I think it was a normal chest, and then he's like, "It'd be a mimic now," like because it was. How do you do that? And again, like I think this is where random encounter tables and other things will serve you well because it's gonna be like, how can you introduce a challenge in both of these instances? You want to hang back while your party's gonna go look, but you're gonna hang back. Guess what? Shit still happens when you hang back. Like don't be afraid to push your players and don't. Oh, you decide, and again, a little bit consequences. You decide to stay in the dark, scary room by yourself while the rest of your party moves on, and you don't really have like any protection, and it's just you. And like, yes, you cleared this room out like 5 minutes ago, but you're in an active dungeon. You're gonna be a little spooked. I'm gonna need you to take the condition frightened until you return to your party. And like that alone
I
is
like
going.
that. I like
That alone is going to like drive them to a solution of some kind. Like, I'm frightened. I need to get not frightened. I'm going to like figure something out. Like, push your players. Like, I think a lot of times it's like, no, I have determined that I am safe. And you, as the GM, need to remember players do not determine when they are safe. You do.
Well, I will say, and I'm sure actually, you know what, there's actually probably specific mechanics in here that I can discuss, but we are getting pretty late on time.
I know. I
So
want to talk
let's,
about this forever.
I know, I know. There is a, like, if you were taking, so for instance, I can't discuss like too much of it, but there's mechanics in Curse of Strahd for if you are um resting in an area for too long, you're probably gonna
Yes.
get attacked.
Yes. That's my thing. Like, don't be afraid. I think a little bit like we're afraid of engaging with the system because we don't want to like make our players not sad but enraged to shock point's point. Like I just but at the same time, like, nah man, like go for it. As long as you've had a conversation with your players beforehand of what kind of game to expect, uh like go for it. Like use the mechanics. I think a lot of the times we see them as like a barrier to what we want to do. No. You need to, and this is, I'm inspired. I know Chum and Ash are in the chat. I'm inspired by freaking Akechi. Use the mechanics like to your advantage. Be creative with how you interpret them, right? Like if someone says something incredibly stupid, you guys are stunned for the next 6 seconds because that was just fucking dumb. Just
Yeah.
use them. It will make it more fun overall. And like I think a lot of the times with this stuff too, like you don't want to get into like a well that's not how that rule works conversation with your players and then it stops the game and then you argue about, status effects for 20 minutes before you get to move on, which is why you need to have that level setting conversation. But be creative with these rules. Like I think a lot of times we're just dismissive and we're like, I don't want it. But they could be really interesting.
Really quick,
Yeah,
because we do need to get going.
I know.
I want to direct your attention, Sarah, to page 298.
298. Let's go to there. Pew pew pew. Two. Is it gonna change my life? Am I gonna be a
I
different
mean,
person?
it's gonna do something.
Uh-oh. 298. This is like the back of the book. Oh my gosh. Here we go.
Yes,
298.
it is a table. And I will let you know that the current section that we are in is called Stalking a Dungeon.
Yes.
And these are tables that you can use for well, let's go to the one that I intended to talk to you about. Random tricks.
Yes. Yes.
You have a D20,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Or D100, right?
Well, a D20 that will determine the object.
Oh, gotcha.
For instance, you roll a 1, it's a book. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you touch the book, Sarah? I don't know. Roll a D100.
Got a 42 to 44. It grants a wish.
Fuck.
Yeah. This table's buck wild.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
see, like there's so many resources in the DMG that you can utilize, and that's like if you're going to get the DMG, there's some cool rule clarifications in here and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest thing is these like dungeon. This is like dungeon helper essentially. Like
Yes. Yes. I think we have to. We think you have to like get it from your own brain, and like that's the only way you can be successful. No, like a lot of this stuff is going to like deepen the experience and like honestly freak your players out. One of these is literally just noises. So you roll a D100 and like you hear footsteps behind you. And your players are going to be like, "Shit, they planned that." And it's like, "No, I didn't. It's just to freak you out."
Purple Phil and Heck, roll a D20 for me real quick.
Yes.
And Ash, also roll a D20, but those are the only 3 I'm doing.
It's so
rolls
good.
the dice and get a 20. Purple Phil, you find a target dummy. And when you what do you roll? 55? When you touch it, you immediately start to feel like people around you have much better equipment than you, too much money, and you want it all. Effectively, you are now greedy.
Yes, these are like good table, bad table without needing to be good table, bad table.
Heck, you find a suit of armor, and when you touch it, oh, this is cool. You find a suit of armor, and when you approach it, the visor lifts up and starts speaking to you, and it asks you 3 questions. If you get all 3 questions right, you get a reward.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah.
And Ash, real quick, 17, Ash, you find a stone obelisk. And you find a stone obelisk, and as you approach, it starts reading slam poetry to you.
This is amazing. That was all a table. That's all a fucking table. Can you imagine how cool that, like, that's my thing is I think a lot of times we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. It's like, we have to have all the answers and it has to be the coolest thing and it has to all come from a brain. No, it doesn't. Yeah. Encounters don't mean combat. Not everything has to be planned. Roll with it.
So if you, so this is actually really cool because you can do, so Appendix A of the DMG is just random dungeons. You can build an entire dungeon based off of random tables in Appendix A.
Yes.
So if you ever wanted to run a one shot where you're just like, well, here we go. Let's roll the dice and see what happens.
And they're so fun. Random right sessions are so fun because it's just hijinks. It's so good. Everyone should do, yes, magic. So everything is random one shot. Cannot recommend it enough. It's buck wild. It's super fun. Everyone should do it at least once because I think what it shows GMs and players, it does not need to be that complicated. Like
I might run a random one shot with this. Like,
yes,
it seems really cool.
So good. So good.
Like, no prep except for what is built in the random in Appendix A. That's really cool. I'd love to do that. That's amazing. That'd be a lot of fun.
Amazing. Awesome.
Um,
Should we wrap it up? I'm
I
sad.
think
I'm
so.
sad. Purple joked like part 2 next month, and I'm like, kinda, yeah. And if you guys like this, I know Ty and I talked. We have talked about. We want to have more of these conversations with different systems. So like Monster of the Week, or even I would love to dive into like very system light things like Money Heist. Like I want to talk about running different games and how the mechanics work and how they can be different and how they can apply across your games, because there's shit that I steal from games to bring into my own, because essentially it's your game, it's your rules. Work with it. But if you want to see more stuff like that, uh definitely like we'll kind of cover it in our outros. But join the Discord. You can throw suggestions to us there. Or like on Twitter, like hit me up, fam. Like tweet me, like we want to talk about rules. Tweet me what you want to talk about. We'll come in here, we'll have a conversation. It'll be great. And we'll kind of go over that. Um
Tweet and also if you're interested in some of these random tables, um if you want a random table, I'm not going to tell you what the table is. No, I lied. If you want more tricks, because these tricks are amazing,
so good.
if you want a random trick for yourself, tweet at Sarah and I with the hashtag murder ampersand coffee, and give us your D20 roll and your D100 roll, and we will let you know what your random trick is.
It'd be so good. Um, so I'll kick us off on the leavings. Hi, I know we've got first of all, we got some follows today, which was wonderful. Gift of Gabby, the Cedar Forge. I see some new usernames in the chat. Welcome everybody. We hope that this was an educational and fun, chill experience. This is Murder and Coffee. It's a GM show that we run once a month. I'm Osarix Franco. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Osarix Franco. I every month here on TPK, I run the Bard's Refrain, a homebrew campaign where each session is best based on the narrative of a song. Our next session is a week from today, a Saturday evening. We start at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So come check that out. I will also be running the Swift and Vicious One Shot, which is a modified honey heist game based on the Fast and Furious franchise. Sunday morning, the following Sunday morning, and I'm very excited about it. I'm a player in a variety of shows here on TBK, like The Harpers, Dark Echoes, which is a Curse of Strahd campaign. You can also find me over in Nat 20 every Sunday in Morningstar and Company, in shows like Beyond the Tides, Smash Cut, and a whole slew of things. Purple, you don't know. Anyways, Ty, tell the people where they can find your face and stuff.
Hey, I am Ty, Tyrant, Dr. Tyrant, all those good names. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Dr. Tyrant. I will be back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Pacific for potentially the last part of 55 Below Zero, which is our Arctic horror, um, evil Nazi abomination creation lab one shot, multi shot. It's really fun. It's a great story, written and GM'd by David Dudka, who is at Fazul in our Discord. He's an incredible storyteller and story writer, so please come out and support him and all of us tomorrow morning. I will be um, I'll be off pretty much the entire week until Dark Echoes on the 24th, Saturday the 24th in the morning, where I will be bringing back Winchester, my druid, who has made a terrible mistake.
He made a terrible mistake.
I did one of the classic blunders, and
Oh,
he did a
oh,
summoning ritual in a corrupted place of power, and now just
Yeah.
bad shit is happening.
Big bad. Big bad.
In the meantime, though, I'm not going to be doing much TTRPG stuff between now and then, but I will be streaming on my personal channel. I'm going to be taking a few hours off today, but I will be back around 3-ish Mountain Standard Time to stream Life is Strange. It's a really intense, psychological, emotion-filled story game that was recommended to me by my brother, and so I'm going to be playing it and probably crying. So if you want to see a
Yikes.
grown man cry on stream, come see that.
Yeah. Really quick too, I want to hype because we've put out official announcements and everything. Ty and I are going to be in an Altered Carbon based campaign starting the 26th. Do I have that date right? Let me double check.
The 26th.
Yes, the 26th. And I'm so excited. We're gonna go full sleeves. Cannot wait. It's gonna be great. So check that out here at TBK Roleplay as well.
And stick around after the stream is ending. We are going to be raiding Master of Rim, who are playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, but until next time, keep your coffee hot
and your mortar is cold. See you guys.
Bye, everybody.